There were exactly 3 red envelopes under the coffee table. She didn't put them there. I didn't put them there. But they were addressed to her, in handwriting I recognized immediately, mine. She bent down, confused. Opened the first one. Inside, a photograph of her laughing. But not just laughing with someone. Someone in a scarf I'd never seen before. Someone touching her elbow the way I used to when we were still happy. The second envelope had a napkin. A stained one. Finchley's Fusion Grill. That overpriced place she swore she hated. Except this one had a number written on the back. A hotel room number. The third envelope? Empty. Except for a note. I won't be in the audience tonight. She stared at me. I stared at the floor. She didn't say a word. She never does when she knows she's caught. Instead, she straightened her posture like she always does before a performance. Wiped her fingers on her jeans. Said, "Fine. Do what you want." And left. She still did the TEDx talk. Still stood on that stage. Still told that joke. You ever live with someone for so long, you start saying we even when you're alone? I once caught myself saying, "We need to buy oat milk," while crying in my car. Alone. Crowd laughed. Of course they did. But eventually, you stop sharing groceries and start sharing secrets with someone new. More laughter. She thought she was being clever, that no one would catch the subtext. But the seat in the front row, the one with my name on it, stayed empty the whole time. And she saw it. Right at the end. Her smile faltered. For a fraction of a second. But the cameras kept rolling. Applause swelled. She bowed. And in that exact moment, the one where everyone was clapping, she finally realized I was gone. And that's the last time I saw her. Until the voicemail. It was 3:47 a.m. when my phone lit up. A voicemail. No call. Just the audio. The 11th one she'd left in 2 days. I hadn't listened to any of the others. I just watched the little red bubbles pile up like digital guilt. But this one had no transcript. Just a blank notification. Something about that pulled at me. So I played it. First 5 seconds were silent. Just the background hum of a fridge or maybe a car engine. Then her voice, low and unsteady. I saw the envelope. The third one. You didn't have to do that. Pause. I thought it would make me feel exposed, but it didn't. It just made me tired. She sighed. A shaky inhale followed. The kind people do when they're trying not to cry, but know they're about to lose that battle. You think I don't know what I've done. But Hugo, you never saw what you did either. You stopped seeing me. Like really seeing me. Somewhere around year 5, I think. Or maybe it was when you quit teaching and started narrating other people's lives for a living. Ironic, isn't it? You edited stories while ours just sat in drafts. I paused it there. That line hit too close. It wasn't just cruel, it was true. She had told me once, years ago, that she missed how I used to look at her like I was trying to memorize her. But life got heavy, and then heavier, and I let that gaze turn into something more like squinting. Like I couldn't see her clearly anymore, and stopped trying to fix my lens. But still, that didn't justify Thatch. Or the dinners. Or the lies she called a TED Talk. I hit play again. I don't know if you're gone for good, or if you're just doing your dramatic disappearing act. I don't know which would hurt more. But you should know something. Another long pause. He was never supposed to be real. He was just supposed to make me feel wanted again. I never even told him my real last name. My hand tightened around the phone. So he wasn't really in her life? But he was in the hotel. He was in the text messages. He was in the joke. The voicemail continued, her voice cracking this time. You know what's funny? Everyone loved that joke. The one about the place card wife. They laughed and clapped like I'd delivered the line of the century. But I looked out and didn't see your face. And suddenly it wasn't a punchline. It was a confession. Click. End of message. I sat there, in the dim motel room I'd rented an hour outside of the city, phone in hand, jaw clenched. And for the first time since I left, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel justified. I felt like I had walked away from a burning house, only to realize the fire started in my room. But it was too late, right? That's what I told myself, over and over, until the next envelope showed up. Not when I left. Once she did. And what was inside? The next envelope arrived 2 days later. It wasn't hidden, like the ones I left for her. It was placed deliberately, right at my motel door, leaning against the frame like it was waiting for me to come back from the dead. No return address. Just my name written in her handwriting. Too neat, too careful, like she had rewritten it several times before sealing it. I stood there staring at it for what felt like an hour before I opened it. Inside was a single page torn from one of her notebooks, the small gray one she used for writing her ideas when she couldn't sleep. I recognized the way she looped her L's, the tiny smudges from her thumb when she pressed too hard with the pen. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't even an apology. It was a transcript of her speech. Every word she'd said that night. Word for word. The one that had gone viral. I hadn't realized it at first, but her TEDx talk had exploded online. 5 million views in 3 days. She was being called the voice of modern womanhood in the comments section. But the transcript she sent me wasn't the same version that went public. I knew, because I'd watched it 3 times already, trying to torture myself with every line. This one had extra sentences, phrases she must have cut before stepping on stage. Private versions of her thoughts that no one else had heard. Right under the section about becoming your own person after losing yourself in someone else, she had written in parentheses, "He won't forgive me for the truth, but I'll forgive myself for finally saying it out loud." Then, further down, another note. This part was supposed to be about rebuilding, but I never did. I only demolished. I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. She hadn't sent this to gloat. It was something else, a confession disguised as art. Or maybe a test, to see if I still cared enough to read between the lines. And for some reason, that infuriated me even more. She always had this way of turning guilt into performance, turning real pain into something poetic that strangers would applaud. I was living the aftermath of her growth arc, and she was out there trending under #ResilientLeanne. There was something else in the envelope too. A photo. Old. From our 2nd anniversary. We were sitting on the edge of a pier, eating sandwiches out of paper bags because we couldn't afford a restaurant that year. She had written on the back in faint ink, "You said this was your favorite version of us." I think it was mine too. I didn't cry, though I could feel something close to it trying to claw its way up my throat. Instead, I poured myself another cup of motel coffee and stared at the photo until the edges blurred. I thought about calling her. I even typed a message, "Why now?" But I deleted it before sending. She didn't deserve my questions. Or maybe she did, and I didn't deserve her answers. I couldn't tell anymore. That night, I dreamed of the stage. Not how it looked on the live stream. No, in my dream, it was empty. The red carpet had been rolled up. The microphone was on the floor, and the spotlight was pointed at a single chair. Mine. C2. The one I never sat in. And there she was, standing beside it, whispering something I couldn't make out. When I woke up, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Same number. Same time. 3:47 a.m. I didn't listen. Not yet. Instead, I looked at the photo again and noticed something I hadn't before. Behind us, in the reflection of the water, there was another figure. A faint outline. Someone standing just far enough away that I couldn't see the face. It was blurry, but it was there. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if it was just the camera or if it was him. I told myself it was a trick of the light. That shadowy figure in the lake's reflection, standing just behind us on that old anniversary photo. It had to be a boat post, or maybe some optical illusion. Cameras distort things. Our minds finish pictures we don't understand. But once you suspect you've been lied to, I mean truly lied to, not the small stuff, not the forgot to call you back kind of lies, but the ones that rewrite your whole timeline. You can't unsee things anymore. You question everything. Every moment. Every memory. Every goddamn reflection. So I did what any unhinged, possibly delusional man might do in my position. I started looking through our old photos. All of them. The ones still synced to my cloud, the dusty backups from her old hard drive, even the time-stamped Google Photos albums she once made for her vision board. And here's where it gets weird. There's a photo from Leanne's 35th birthday. It was taken at a cabin upstate, a quiet little Airbnb near Lake Tolson. She'd said she needed a solo trip to realign, to detox from all the chaos. I respected that. I'd even helped her pack. But in the photos she took, or rather, the ones she uploaded to her shared drive months later, supposedly as inspiration for her blog post on solitude, there were wine glasses. 2. One half full, one nearly empty. Maybe that was nothing. Maybe she brought both out to the deck to avoid walking back inside. Maybe. But in one photo, her feet are up on the railing, and in the very edge of the frame, cropped almost entirely out, there's the corner of a book. I zoomed in. The book was The Art of Being Alone Together, a relationship memoir by some YouTube psychologist she used to binge during lockdown. She never read that book with me. I remember because I bought it for her, and it sat untouched on our shelf for 6 months until I finally donated it. So why was it upstate with her? Who was she reading it with? And here's the kicker, the metadata on the photo. I almost didn't check. Who checks photo metadata in 2025 unless they're losing their grip? But I did. And it said the photo was taken on July 22nd, her birthday. But the timestamp was 2:03 a.m. She told me she went to bed early that night because she had a long hike the next morning. At 2:03 a.m., she was wide awake, drinking wine, reading a book about emotional intimacy, with someone else's wine glass beside her. My stomach turned. I felt like I was digging up bones in our backyard, like our whole life had become this archaeological site of missed signs and buried truths. And the worst part? I started to wonder if it was always like this. If she had always been like this. If I had just been too naive, or too comfortable, or too convinced that love would never become strategy. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in the motel armchair with the blanket wrapped around me like I was expecting a winter that hadn't arrived. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Number 12. I finally pressed play. This time, her voice was different. Softer. Like she'd stopped trying to perform. I don't know if you're even listening anymore. Maybe you've blocked me. Maybe you're somewhere else entirely, laughing at how it all played out. But I need to say this, not for forgiveness. I know better than to ask for that. There was a pause. His name wasn't Thatch. That was the name in my phone because I didn't want to see his real name when he texted. His real name was... She hesitated. Does it matter? I sat forward, my breath caught in my throat. It did matter. But she didn't say it. She just kept going. He wasn't who you think he is. Or maybe he was. Maybe I just wanted him to be. I don't even know anymore. I just wanted to feel awake again. And he made me feel like I was glowing in the dark. Glowing in the dark. That was a phrase she used to describe falling in love with me. In a letter she wrote back, when we were still sneaking around like teenagers. Before we had bills and stress and silence at the dinner table. But you need to understand, she continued, I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show up for that love. The message ended with a click. No goodbye, no apology, just a slow, flickering unraveling. I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling, completely motionless. It wasn't about just her anymore. Not about Thatch, or hotel receipts, or cryptic TED jokes. Something bigger was happening, something I hadn't seen yet. Because later that morning, when I finally left the motel to clear my head, I saw a man parked across the lot in a green Subaru. Engine off, sunglasses on, watching me. And I'm pretty sure he had the same book on his dashboard. I didn't approach him. Not right away. I just stood there outside the coffee shack in that cracked parking lot, pretending to check my phone while my eyes kept flicking back to the green Subaru across the lane. He wasn't moving. Didn't even flinch when a delivery truck passed close to his rear bumper. He just sat there, left hand on the steering wheel, right arm resting across the passenger seat, like he was waiting for someone who was late, but not unexpected. And the book, The Art of Being Alone Together. Same exact edition Leanne had in her photo, lying right on his dashboard. It was tilted at an angle where the sun glared off the plastic, but I could still make out the dog-eared page halfway through. It wasn't new. It had been read, handled. I recognized the wear of thumbprints near the edges. That was her copy. I knew it in my gut the way you just know some things. At one point, he lifted a travel mug to his lips, glanced in my direction, then looked away. Not startled, not evasive, just casually aware. Like I was the one who'd been caught watching. I tried to steady my hands as I walked back to my rental car. The coffee in my cup sloshed against the lid as I sat inside and shut the door. I didn't drive off immediately. I cracked the window and just breathed for a minute, trying to convince myself that I was spiraling, that this was some stranger. A coincidence. That Subaru Outbacks were everywhere, and maybe that book had hit a second print run and landed on some morning talk show list. Maybe this guy was just on a break. Just someone who liked cheap paperbacks and strong coffee. But when I finally left, when I made the first turn back toward the highway, I checked my mirror. He pulled out of the lot less than 10 seconds later. I took 3 different turns before even reaching the freeway entrance. Once onto a side street, twice into gas stations. I didn't signal once. I just moved. And every time, he followed. Not close enough to be obvious, but not far enough to lose me either. It was subtle, precise. Too precise for random. I don't remember breathing much during that drive. I just remember my pulse. Every sound felt louder. The tick of my blinker, the soft rattle of loose coins in the center console, the tiny click every time I blinked. My motel wasn't far, but I didn't go back. I ended up in the library parking lot 3 towns over. A place she and I once went on a rainy Sunday just to use the Wi-Fi because our power had gone out. I stayed there for hours. He didn't follow me that far. Or if he did, he stayed out of view. That night, I checked the door 3 times before sleeping. I moved the chair in front of it. Not because I thought he'd break in. No, that wasn't his style. That man wasn't impulsive. He was methodical. The kind who let you know he'd been there without ever stepping inside. At 3:47 a.m., like clockwork, the next voicemail came in. Number 13. I almost didn't listen, but something told me this one would be different. So I played it on speaker, staring at the motel ceiling like it might start leaking blood. Leanne's voice came through, softer than before, less composed. Almost scared. I think I made a mistake. A real one. Not the kind I can put in a speech. A beat passed. I could hear her pacing. Her breath was uneven, sharp. I didn't know he'd find you. I didn't even know he knew your name. I never told him. I swear. My whole body stiffened. Hugo, you need to leave wherever you are. He's not just some guy. I thought he was. I wanted him to be, but he isn't. Another pause. A whisper now. If he talks to you, don't believe what he says. Not about me. Not about anything. Just go. Please. Then the voicemail cut out. Not ended. Cut. Mid-sentence. Mid-word. No goodbye. No closure. Just static. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours. My mind had left the building, my thoughts scattering into spirals I couldn't pull back into shape. So it wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a joke in a speech. It was something else. Something she didn't, or couldn't, explain. And now someone was watching me. Following me. Carrying her book like a souvenir. There were too many pieces, and I was missing the corner edges. But then I remembered something. One place. One, where Leanne and I had always kept things. Notes. Secrets. Stuff we didn't want to say out loud. The old journal under the floorboard of the music room. The one we hadn't opened in 6 years. If she'd left anything for me, it would be there. And if she hadn't, if that room was empty, then I'd finally have my answer. It took me nearly 4 hours to convince myself to go back to the house. Not because I was afraid of seeing her. She wasn't there. She'd flown out for a retreat, or a panel, or one of those soft-lit wellness summits where people sit cross-legged on beanbags and cry into recycled paper journals. No, the fear wasn't about her. It was the house itself. It still smelled like eucalyptus and printer ink. Still had the faint marks on the kitchen tiles from the time we dropped the walk. Still had her shoes lined up by the front door in ascending order of emotional labor. The place felt like a museum curated by someone who hated me. But I walked in anyway. I didn't turn on the lights. The moonlight through the blinds was enough. I made my way through the hallway, past the framed vision quotes she'd hung near the bathroom, past the coat rack with my old denim jacket still hanging like it expected me to come back last Tuesday. The music room was cold. It always was, for some reason. Even in summer, even with the windows closed. The carpet had long been removed, replaced by varnished hardwood that neither of us liked but pretended to for the sake of adulting. In the corner stood her cello, untouched for years, and next to it, the cheap keyboard we used to play duets on before we realized we were better at harmonizing sounds than emotions. I went straight to the far wall. The baseboard beneath the bay window had a slat that never quite fit right. She'd once hidden a necklace there after a fight, just to see if I'd notice it missing. I hadn't. It pulled up easily. Beneath it, dust, a torn receipt, and then, there, the journal. Our old tan leather-bound notebook with the broken elastic band. We called it the safe back then. Whenever we couldn't say something out loud, we wrote it in there. Sometimes one of us would find a new page with a note, and sometimes we wouldn't talk about it for days. Not until we were ready. It was our weird version of trust. I pulled it out with shaking hands and sat on the floor. The last entry before now was hers. Dated over 6 years ago. I miss you, and you're right next to me. I'm scared that this silence is permanent. But I don't want to be the one to break it, because what if we say the wrong thing and it never comes back? I turned the page. Blank. Then another. Still blank. But after that, a folded letter, tucked between pages. My name on the outside. No date. No explanation. I opened it and read. Hugo, if you're reading this, it means things have gone wrong in a way I never wanted. You've probably pieced together the obvious parts by now. Yes, there was someone. No, it wasn't what you think. He wasn't someone I planned to fall into. He was just there when I stopped being seen. And I know that sounds like blame, but it isn't. You were drowning too, just quieter about it. But there's more you don't know. There's something I never wanted to tell you, because I didn't want it to define what we had. But I have to tell you now, because I think someone else might. And if it's going to be said, it should be from me first. Remember the trip I took to Portland 2 years ago? The writing workshop? It wasn't just a workshop. I didn't go alone. He went with me, and I told everyone it was a group retreat, but it wasn't. It was just him and me, and a cabin, and a week of pretending I wasn't married. I wore a fake ring on my right hand, so I wouldn't feel it digging into my skin. I told myself it was just for clarity, to help me write. But it was a lie, Hugo. A lie I lived in fully. And then something happened. I got pregnant. I stopped reading. The air felt thinner, like the drywall was shrinking in toward me. The journal slid from my hands, landed face down, spine cracked open like a broken rib cage. I sat there on the hardwood floor for at least 10 minutes, completely still. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels like rigor mortis. Pregnant? She never told me. Not then. Not ever. Did she? Did she lose it? Or? I picked up the journal again, hands trembling. There was more. I didn't keep it. I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know who I was anymore. I was lost. I was lying to you, lying to him, lying to myself. And bringing a child into that, it didn't feel like saving anything. It felt like extending the lie. I'm not proud. I'm not even sure I was awake for most of it. But I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to look at me like I was poison, like I'd killed a version of us that could have survived. If he ever finds you, the man I told you about, don't believe anything he says. He doesn't know the truth, and if he thinks he does, he'll try to twist it. He always does. He sees control as closeness. He doesn't understand grief, only power. I'm sorry, Hugo, for all of it. If this is the last thing you ever hear from me, please remember something real, the pier, the sandwiches, the fact that I once memorized the way you stirred your tea because it made me feel safe. I folded the letter back up with shaking hands. Outside, a car door slammed. I crawled to the window, heart in my throat. The green Subaru, parked across the street, engine running. But this time, the passenger door was open, and someone had stepped out. He was walking toward the house, and I wasn't sure if I should run or wait. He didn't knock. He just stood there, under the porch light, casting two shadows on the wall behind him, one short, one taller, like he was already accompanied by ghosts. I could see him clearly through the peephole, tall, mid-30s maybe, sandy hair, wearing a forest green jacket zipped to the collar. His expression wasn't threatening. In fact, it was disarmingly neutral, like a man who delivers bad news for a living and has simply gotten good at it. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I told myself I'd wait him out. He'd get bored, drive off. He'd realize I wasn't giving him the satisfaction of confrontation. But then he said my name, calmly, almost politely. Hugo, I know you're in there. I froze. His voice was nothing like I imagined. Not smug, not aggressive, just flat, like he was reading a name off a clipboard. I just want to talk, he continued, as if this were a scheduled appointment. I'm not here to start anything. I think, actually, we're both victims in this. Victims. The word lodged somewhere deep in my gut. I opened the door a crack, kept the security chain latched, just enough to see him fully. Up close, he looked tired. Not messy, just drained. As if he hadn't slept in a week and had accepted that sleep might not return. His eyes flicked briefly to the chain, then back to mine. I'm not here to fight, he repeated. Then what are you here for? I asked, my voice more brittle than I expected. A TED Talk of your own? His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Not quite guilt. Can I come in? No. He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected that. He slipped his hands into his jacket pockets and took a step back. She told you something about me. Something that made you afraid. Or angry. Or both. She told me enough? I said. I doubt that, he replied. She never really told anyone everything. Not even me. There was silence. I hated that he stood so calmly on the porch of my house, like he belonged there, like he was just another guest dropping by. But more than that, I hated the possibility that he was right. He sighed. I wasn't trying to find you. That part's true. I didn't even know your name until I saw it printed on that seat. What seat? Front row, he said. At her talk. My blood chilled. I was there, he added, almost gently. Back row. She didn't see me. But I saw you weren't there, and I saw the way she scanned the crowd like she was trying to manifest you into that chair. Like if she looked hard enough, you'd just appear. And when you didn't, something in her cracked. I didn't respond. My throat felt like it had a fist wrapped around it. I followed her afterward. Not in a creepy way. Just, I needed closure. She was never clear with me. One minute we were together, the next I was blocked. No explanation. Just gone. He leaned slightly forward. So I looked into you. Found your name. Saw the motel records. Traced your car. I just wanted to know what part of the story you got. Whether she told you about the cabin. About the retreat. About the kid. He paused. And then he said it. I thought the baby was mine. A silence detonated between us. She never told me she ended it, he went on. She just disappeared. Said she needed to figure herself out. But when I confronted her months later, she told me she'd lost it. That it wasn't my fault. That it was nobody's. But you know how she is. She says things in half-truths. Makes them sound poetic so they feel softer. My legs nearly buckled, but I held onto the doorframe. I came here because I need to know if that's true, he said. If there was even a child at all. I stared at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't see a villain. I didn't even see a rival. I saw another man who had loved a woman who used words like weapons and turned silence into strategy. But then something occurred to me. If you thought the kid was yours, I asked slowly, why was your name never on anything? No messages. No receipts. No letters. He didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Because she said putting my name on things made them real. And she didn't want me to feel like it was real. I closed the door an inch. You said we're both victims, I said. But I think we're something worse. We're the stories she edited for performance. He didn't argue. Just nodded. And then, for the first time, he looked nervous. I think you should know, he said, voice lower now. She's not in Portland. She didn't go to any retreat. She didn't fly out at all. My chest tightened. I saw her 3 days ago. At a clinic. In town. I blinked. She didn't look well, he said. Like she hadn't slept in days. Like she was waiting for something bad to catch up with her. I shut the door without another word. Locked every bolt. Sat with my back to the wall. I had no idea what was true anymore. But I knew where I needed to go next. The clinic was tucked behind an elementary school, quiet and unassuming, with a name that sounded more like a spa than a place people went when their lives were collapsing. I sat in my car across the street for 37 minutes before getting out. Not because I was scared. I just didn't know what I'd say if she looked at me and pretended not to recognize who I was. Or worse, if she recognized me too clearly. It was raining when I crossed the lot. That soft, indecisive rain that never fully commits, just enough to blur your glasses and soak through the edges of your sleeves. I walked in, told the woman at the front desk I was there to check on someone. She looked me up and down like she knew I was lying, then motioned to a chair by the window and said quietly, "She's here. Just give her a minute." 8 minutes passed. Then I saw her. Leanne stepped out from a hallway near the far end. She was thinner, her hair tied back with one of those scarves she used to wear when she was writing at the kitchen table. No makeup. Her expression didn't shift when she saw me. Not surprise, not shame. Just this soft, open quiet. I stood. She walked over, slowly. We sat down by the window. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then she broke the silence with a whisper. "You came." I nodded. My voice cracked when I said, "Yeah." She looked out at the parking lot. I didn't know if I was allowed to still hope for that. I swallowed hard. "I didn't come to fix anything," I said. "I came because I needed to stop watching the movie of us in reverse." She let out a breath that turned into a small laugh. A sad, grateful sound. "That's the most you thing I've ever heard." We talked for an hour. Not about the affair. Not about the man. Not even about the pregnancy. Those had already been buried in the pages of journals, voicemails, floorboards, and guilt. We talked about now. About what came after the collapse. She told me she was in therapy. That the TED Talk had messed her up in ways she didn't expect. That the applause felt like forgiveness from strangers, and that made it harder to earn her own. I told her I'd stopped listening to her voicemails not because I didn't care, but because they made me feel like I was living inside someone else's dream. Then something strange happened. We started laughing. Not big belly laughs. Just small, tired ones. The kind that happen when two people realize they've been carrying around matching bruises for years, thinking the other one caused them, when really, the fall had been mutual. At one point, she touched my hand. I didn't pull away. "I'm not asking you to come back," she said. "Not unless you want to. Not unless it would feel new. I don't want the old version of us anymore." I nodded. "I don't either." The truth is, I didn't know what I wanted. Not yet. But for the first time in a long time, I felt safe not knowing. We left the clinic together, not holding hands, not making promises, just walking beside each other, breathing the same air again. That night, I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't run either. I stayed in a quiet Airbnb near the lake. The same lake from that photo. I made tea, sat by the window, listened to the wind, and thought about the sandwiches we once shared on a wooden pier when life was simpler and we were softer. I don't know what happens next, but maybe that's the point. Maybe healing isn't a grand moment. Maybe it's two people sitting by a window seat at 8:43 a.m., realizing that the worst already happened, and they're still here. Alive. Changed. But not broken. And that's enough for now.